Copy, endorsement 3906.
And there's glide slope. We'll take the gear down. Hello again guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are taking a look at the newest member of the Aerosoft CRJ family. As you can see, it's currently very early morning here on the ground in Copenhagen. We're going to be taking the Aerosoft CRJ on a short hop up north towards Bergen. We're looking at a flight time of just over 1 hour, the distance around 450 nautical miles. We'll be cruising at flight level 380. We've got around 70 passengers on board, just 1 tonne of cargo. All up we'll be carrying 4.6 tonnes of fuel. It should be a nice flight overall, I'm certainly looking forward to it. Weather-wise not bad, very typical for this time of the year in this part of the world. As always, I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. If you have any comments or questions for me, you can leave those down in the comments section below. Let's now get ourselves comfortable in the left-hand seat of the CRJ 900 and we'll begin prepping the aircraft for the flight. Okay, so we just got ourselves sat down and comfortable in the left-hand seat of the CRJ 900. First things first, as you can see, we now have some excellent real-world AI traffic courtesy of AIG. We've got the Lufthansa 321 there and the EasyJet 320 just behind. So far all we've done is get the APU up and running. We've got the packs on as well, so we'll continue on with our cockpit preparations. The IRSs can both go to nav, and coming down to the CDU we'll go to POSINIT. And the line based on the GNSS 1 position. Fuel pumps are off fuel. We have just under 4.5 tonnes on board, which is what we need for the flight today. APU is running, hydraulics, the 3B pump can go on. And for the flight controls, the stab trims, mac trim and yaw dampers can go on. Landing elevation we'll leave at 0, we're basically at sea level here on the ground in Copenhagen. And for the altimeters, as you can see we've got 1020 set there on the QNH across the board. So coming down to the CDU, we'll start setting that up for the flight. We'll first go to the flight plan page, and departing out of Copenhagen, which is Echo Kilo Charlie Hotel, bound for Bergen, which is Echo November Bravo Romeo. And the alternate will be Oslo, which is Echo November Golf Mike. Flight number this morning is Scandinavian 2870, so Sierra Kilo 2870. And double checking that, we'll hit execute. Onto the Perfinite, we'll be cruising at flight level 380. Fuel on board, we've already got entered 4,491 kilograms. And the zero fuel weight, 29,100 kilograms. Once again, double checking the data and we'll hit execute. Onto the VNAV, we've got a climb speed of 290 knots, transitioning to Mach 0.74, transition altitude of 5,000 feet, and the 250 knot below 10 speed restriction. Cruising at 300 knots, 0.74, flight level 380. And on the descent, transitioning back to 290 knots, transition flight level 70, and speed 250 knots below 10. Onto the departures, expecting runway 30, and it will be the Mixi 2 Delta departure. And then for the arrival, expecting ILS runway 17, the Whiskey approach, and it'll be the Badan 2 November arrival via waypoint Nepam. So for the flight plan itself, we've got the Mixi 2 Delta taking us out towards waypoint Mixi. Next waypoint after that will be waypoint Aslid, which is Alpha Sierra Lima India Delta. And then from Aslid we'll join on to the Papa 990 airway. That'll take us out towards the Alpha Alpha Lima VOR. Will next be the Lima 621 airway. And that'll take us out towards waypoint Tukmu, which is Tango Uniform Kilo Mike Uniform. And then on the Lima 197 airway. And that'll be out towards waypoint Badab, which, as we already said, is the arrival we're expecting into Bergen. So once again we'll hit execute, we'll come onto the legs page, just make sure that the flight plan's set up correctly. As you can see we've got the discon, the two bad ab waypoints there, so we'll clean that up.
Volvo 3, Immersion starter fleet, condition 994.
And the flight plan looks good, so we've got the flight plan set up, departures and arrivals are set. Legs page has been checked, no secondary required, VNAV is set. We'll just come on to the perf page, we'll go with a flex temp of 50 for the takeoff. And I'll go with the legs page on my side, we'll take the progress page on the first officer side. So the CDU setup is complete, we'll set the V speeds. We'll do that the quick way today, so it's a flaps 8 takeoff, dry runway, we'll set all of those speeds accordingly on the PFD. And just making sure as well we do have the speed selected there on the FCU. For the lights, we have the nav lights on. Passenger signs can come on as well now. Got the fuel on board already. And the emergency exit lights can go to armed. Chocks, we'll check that the chocks have been removed, which they have. And we'll now look at the departure and we'll brief and set the aircraft up accordingly. So as we already discussed, expecting the MIXI 2 Delta departure from runway 30, that's plate 10-3 X-ray, here out of Copenhagen this morning. Initially climbing on runway heading, which is 299. And we have 299 set, climbing up to an altitude of 4,000 feet.
Volvo 3, exit order point runway 17.
And we have 4,000 there on the PFD. So departing initially out towards waypoint Inkig and then out towards the northwest. We've got the 250 knot speed restriction at or below 7,000 in this case, so we'll keep the speed back till we're through 7,000. No high terrain on the departure. In terms of the weather, as you can see, actually pretty nice weather for the departure overall. Anyway, that's the brief complete. We've also completed our setup of the cockpit. Just waiting for those aisles to continue to align. And once they have, we'll be ready for the push and start. So as you can see, the IRSs have now completed their alignment and we are ready for the push and start. So we'll run through the before start checks. Passenger signs are on. Landing elevation is set. Altimeters are set. FMS has been checked and set. IRSs are aligned. Radios and nav aids are set. And the takeoff briefing is complete. We'll have the tug connect to the aircraft and we'll run the cleared start checks. So personal electronic devices are off, APU is on, electrics are checked, takeoff data is set, doors are closed, beacon is on. Fuel pumps are on and the fuel quantity is checked. Tug just wanting to push there, so we'll take the park brake off. Hydraulic pumps can go to auto and just leaving the 3B in the on position. And the park brake is off. That's the cleared start checks complete. So we'll start engine 1.
Person 3, Victor Papa. Push and start fluid, EKCH 994.
We'll go back to the status page on the ICAS. And just keeping a little bit of an eye on the pushback here. So there's 20% on the N2. We'll unlock the thrust lever, move that into the idle detent. And that should just about do us for the push, so we'll cancel the pushback. The tug disconnecting there, and the park brake can go on.
Aerosoft CRJ, 994.
ITT coming up on engine 1, so we have a good light off, and just waiting for engine number 1 to stabilise.
Aerosoft EKCH 7000 and no reported traffic.
And we should see the engine stable around 22% there on the M1. Looking like we had a good start on engine 1, we'll start engine 2.
Seven 725, Scanner 449. Hello.
Scanner Foster 3, line up runway 17.
And again, just waiting till we're through 20% on the N2. Which we now are, so we'll unlock the number 2 thrust lever. And move that into the idle detent.
Norseman 3, Vito Papa, exit order point runway 17.
There's our increase in ITT.
Scanner Foster 3, wind 110 degrees, 2 knots, runway 17, clear for takeoff. Affirm, Scanner Foster 3, clear for takeoff.
And it looks as though we've had 2 good starts, so we'll run the after start checks. Generators are in auto. Electrics are checked. Bleed valves are in auto. Packs are on. APU we can turn off now that we've got 2 good engines. Let's come back to the status page again. And the APU is running down, so we'll turn off the power and fuel supply. Anti-ice not required for the departure initially. We've got the windshield heat set to low. And the nose wheel steering can go to armed. Just before we commence the taxi, we'll run the taxi checklist ahead of time, so the slats and flaps can go to 8 for the departure. And flaps 8 indicating there on the ICAS. Flight controls. We have full up, full down, and neutral, full left, full right, and neutral. And just the yaw damper there, so we'll recycle those. Trims. So we're looking for a trim of 6.6 units for the takeoff. So 6.6 set, and the rudder trim, aileron trim both in the neutral position. Thrust reversers are armed. Flight instruments are checked. And the brake temps are checked. That's the taxi checklist complete. So park brake can come off. We'll take the taxi light on. For the taxi itself, we've just pushed back off stand Foxtrot 91. We'll make a left turn here onto taxiway Whiskey, and then we'll cut across onto taxiway Victor. We'll take Victor down, crossing runway 22 left, and then we'll be onto an intersection departure for runway 30.
Norseman 3, Vito Papa, line up and wait till runway 17. Norseman 3, Vito Papa, wind 130 degrees, 4 knots, runway 17, clear for takeoff.
Anyway, coming right now onto Victor, and then as I said, we'll take the next left. That'll be onto taxiway India down for runway 30. We'll just wait until we're on India and then we'll carry out the before takeoff checks. And India is going to take us down for the Gulf 2 intersection, runway 30, which is more than enough for us for the departure today. So we're going to be crossing runway 22 left, as I mentioned. We'll get the strobe lights on just as we cross the runway. We'll wait until we've crossed the runway before we carry out any checks. Just focusing our attention. Looks clear in both directions.
Foster FSRealisitc, identify 3700, climb to flight level 200, after passing 5000, direct Strömmen.
Thank you. Climb level 200, 5000, direct Strömmen.
And now just following India all the way around for Golf 2. Strobe lights can go off. And again, we'll just wait until we're completely clear of the runway before we carry out the checks. So we're clear of runway 22 left. The before takeoff checks, lights and strobes. We'll assume we've been given takeoff clearance already, so landing lights can go on, strobe lights can go back on. Fuel cross flow is set to manual. Flight attendants have been advised transponder can go to number 1. Radar and terrain display. I believe that's not currently working in the aircraft still, but we'll give it a go in just a moment. We'll just get ourselves at the holding point. So Golf 2 just on our right.
Polaris, Norseman 396, standing by body center.
Now we'll just hold short runway 30 momentarily. We'll just finish the last of our checks, we'll brief the departure, and then we'll be ready to go.
FSRealisitc, contact Polaris Control 126, decimal 450.
16450 Scandinavia and Copenhagen.
So just finishing up the last of the before takeoff items, the radar terrain display can go to weather radar. And the CAS messages are checked, we'll box those up. As the before takeoff check is complete, the park brake can come off. Lights are set. And it is all clear on the approach. So we'll get ourselves taxied into position, already quite high here on the engine thrust to get the aircraft moving, so we'll take the aircraft on the roll for the takeoff, since the engines are already stable. We'll hit the toga button, and we have takeoff displayed there on the FMA.
Polaris, go förmiddag, Scandinavia 408395, climb level 200.
Looks like we've got a wind slightly out from the right, looking at that windsock.
Level 306, we'll take it.
And take off.
Norseman 3 to Papa, contact Polaris Control 126, decimal 450.
It says toga.
Polaris 16450, Norseman 3 to Papa.
Thrust is set. It's 100 knots.
Norseman 3 Victor Papa, identified 3001, climb to flight level 200, level change, after passing 5000 feet, direct Ranum.
And V1 rotate. A positive climb, the gear can come up. And just getting ourselves trimmed, nicely established on the flight directives. We'll go into nav and speed, we'll get the autopilot in. And we'll just maintain our current speed till we're up through 1500 feet. Looks like we're coming to a little bit of a cloud layer here, so we'll take the cowl anti-ice on. And just come out through 1500, we'll accelerate up to 180 knots initially. And come back to climb thrust. Go flaps 1. And we can start accelerating now up to 220 knots.
That's about 300 level change after Saitek ramen for northbound lite på.
And we'll go flap 0. Just come out through 3000, that's 1 to go. We'll assume we've been given further climb by air traffic up to flight level 110. And there's 110 on the FMA. We'll keep the speed back till we're through this cloud layer. And likewise, we'll leave the cabin crew sat down for now. We'll just centre up the heading bug. Looks like the aircraft actually went into out there, it shouldn't have done, so we'll come back into speed.
Right by 10 degrees, speed reported.
And we have climbed 220 knots.
Copy, Norseman 396.
Come back through transition, so we'll set the altimeters. And we have standard set and cross-checked. You can hear just a little bit of precipitation there on the aircraft as we come through the cloud layer. And again, we'll just keep the speed back at 220 till we get through this next cloud layer ahead of us. Just come up through 8000. Once again, we'll assume we've been given further climb, so we'll come up to flight level 250. And through the worst of cloud now, we'll accelerate up to 250 knots. And as soon as we come through 10,000 feet, we can accelerate up to climb speed of 290 knots. Flaps are up so the recognition lights can come off. We'll carry out the climb checks. Fuel cross flow can go back to auto. Bleeds and APU are set. Thrust reversers can come off. And the CAS messages, just the CAL anti-ice, which as I said we'll leave on for now, so that's the climb checklist complete. Up through 10,000 feet. And we have 290 knots selected for the climb. Doesn't look like there's going to be too much more in this weather. There's obviously quite a quick sector as well, so we'll let the cabin crew up and start working.
Climb file 360, Katrina 4.
We'll accelerate for now, and as we come up through this next cloud layer, we'll bring the speed back again just to get us through it as quickly as possible. Once again, centering up our heading bug, and we'll come out slightly on the range on the navigation display.
Direct netto vidare på er.
We'll come down to the MCDU, go to MFD menu, and just displaying our flight plan information there on the nav display.
Teledoc 767, Skirnage 994.
So showing 400 miles to run towards Bergen at the moment, 43-minute flight time. I'm expecting to arrive with about 3.2 tons of fuel, so about 40 minutes extra fuel on top of what we need for the diversion at the moment. Outside air temperature is currently -11, so we'll definitely leave that CAL anti-ice on for now.
Teledoc 76, no reported traffic, northbound. Teledoc 76, if you're going on western side of Seine, you can contact Andøya for flight info 118 shortly.
So it sounds like the cabin crew have just started the service. That's just about all we need to do in terms of the departure. We'll continue our climb up to flight level 380, that's our cruising altitude for the flight this morning. At some point, once we clear the clouds, we'll let the passengers get up and about. As usual, we'll enjoy the scenery en route, of course taking some of Aerosoft's newest machine to the sim as well. And I'll come back to you again once we're approaching our top of descent and setting the aircraft up for arrival into Bergen. So welcome back to the flight deck. As you can see, we're just coming overhead waypoint Badab at the moment, which is the start of the arrival in towards Bergen. Just approaching our top of descent, we've got about 10 miles to run there at the moment. We'll get the aircraft coming down a little bit early. First restriction on the approach is we need to be above 6,000 feet at Bravo Romeo 624, so we'll set 6,000 for now.
Aerosoft 33, are you still airborne?
There's 6,000. We're coming to vertical speed. And current ground speed, we're only doing just below 400 knots at the moment, so we'll go for VS minus 2,000. That should give us a nice 3-degree profile. So with VS minus 2,000 with 6,000 selected. And we'll come back off the thrust, maintaining 0.74 initially in the descent. On the speed.
Echo Golf 01 QNH 994.
Just keep an eye on things as the aircraft comes around the corner and commences the descent. And then we'll brief once we're comfortable that the aircraft's doing what we want.
Echo Golf 01, clear to enter from the southwest, and expect low approach 35. Wind at the field from the east, 3 knots.
So looking good there on the vertical speed, we'll just centre up our heading bug once again. And we can start briefing the arrival. So we'll be flying the Badab 2 November arrival for the ILS Whiskey runway 17. We've already got that set up in the box. Just a slight amendment to the flight plan earlier, we're actually coming in via waypoint Gilver. So we've set that up, just flicking through the legs page. You can see we've got the arrival there, bringing us in towards waypoint Gilver, and then onto the ILS runway 17. So the plates we'll be looking at are plates 10-2 Bravo for the arrival, it's an RNAV arrival. We're currently GNSS for navigation. And then we'll be on to the ILS runway 17, which as I mentioned is plate 11-1, so we'll brief the ILS now. Coming on to the radio page, we're looking for a frequency of 109.9. Doesn't look like that's auto-tuning just yet, but we'll expect to see that auto-tune later on. Final approach course is 170. We'll keep a good eye on that. I've noticed in the past that the CRJ tends to tune up the reciprocal heading, or at least it has done on some occasions, so we'll keep a good eye out there. Aerodrome elevation 160 feet, so we'll set that now. And we have 160 feet set. We're going down to an MDA of 381, so we can set that. Unfortunately, we can only do 10-foot increments in the CRJ, so we'll go for 390.
Volvo 3, cushion starter please, QNH 994.
And we have 390 set. Just coming back on the thrust there slightly. As I say, we'll maintain 0.74 till we get to 290 knots and then we'll come into speed. Though the aircraft might switch over automatically if I recall correctly. Anyway, down to the MDA of 390. For the missed approach, it's climb runway heading up to 2,000 feet, then tracking on the radial, ultimately climb up to 3,000 feet to enter the hold, and then expecting some vectoring thereafter. In terms of the terrain, there is some high terrain out to the east of the field. The MSA for the arrival's 5,000 feet. We'll be coming into the 3,300 foot sector on the ILS itself. There's various altitude restrictions on the way down. We need to be between 6 and 8,000 feet at Bravo Romeo 624, with a speed restriction there as well of 220 knots, and that carries us all the way out towards the same restriction at waypoint Lutiv. We'll maintain 6,000 until we're through Lutiv, and then we can come down to 4,000 feet to come around the corner for the ILS. In terms of the weather, not a bad morning in Bergen. As you can see, there's still quite a bit of cloud cover around, but otherwise quite nice. Fairly light winds, a little bit chilly on the ground at the moment. Looks like the aircraft has transitioned into speed now, so we'll go for 290 knots as we planned. We'll just leave the thrust where it is for now. We'll let that speed slowly creep up. In terms of our fuel, we're expecting to land at the moment with around 2.7 tonnes. We need 2 tonnes for our diversion stay off to Oslo, should we wish to divert. So we've got about an extra 30 minutes of fuel up our sleeve. We'll be landing on runway 17 as I mentioned. We'll vacate off to the left. Anyway, just coming through 30,000 feet at the moment. That means we need 90 miles to run. Currently showing 98, so we're looking good on the profile. We're not currently showing waypoint Bravo Romeo 624 yet in terms of the distance, but we'll keep a good eye on that, as ultimately that's our first restriction that we need to meet. Transition level at Bergen is by air traffic. We'll call it 11,000 feet, although I think probably we already have it in the box actually, so we'll just have a check. Showing flight level 70 in the box, so we'll go with that. And we can start running through our descent checks. So landing elevation is set. Fuel. We have 2.8 tonnes on board, expecting to land with 2.7. As we mentioned, we've got about 30 minutes extra at the moment. TCAS is set, radar is on, CAS is checked. Landing data. So we'll come to the performance page, we'll set up the landing speeds. So we've got V2GA of 145, VFT of 211, VREF will be 137, we'll set that later on. And the approach briefing is complete. And as you can see on the navigation display, Bergen's about 20 miles out off to the northwest at the moment. Unfortunately, obviously, with the cloud cover as it is, we're not going to be able to see that for the time being. We'll just bring up the before landing checks for later on.
Reinforce rotate, exit order point runway 17.
Yeah, the aircraft's definitely not done a stellar job of calculating our vertical profile here. We're currently showing well low on the profile. And obviously we need to be back at 250 knots below 10,000 as well, so we'll keep an eye on that. We'll start reducing our speed at around 11,500 feet. Looking good on the profile now, so we'll get rid of the speed brake. Reduce our vertical speed. We'll come back to our 2,000 feet per minute rate of descent. We've got 4,000 feet to lose. We need 12 miles. We've got 11 there at the moment.
Person 3, Victor Papa, push and start route, you can reach 994.
And again, we'll just adjust that vertical speed to maintain 290 knots. Coming through 11,500, so we'll get the speed back. We'll come straight back to 220 knots. And again, you can hear just a little bit of precipitation as we come through the cloud layer. We'll zoom in on the nav display just so we can see things a little bit more clearly. We've still got 2,000 feet to lose here at the moment. That means we need 6 miles to run. We've got 8 at the moment. and really we want to be doing about 1500 feet per minute rate of descent, so we'll increase the VS again. We'll come on to the speed brake just to help get that speed coming back. Looking good now in terms of our 250 knots below 10, and coming up on 10,000 feet, so the landing lights are on.
Aerosoft CRJ 994.
Got another 1500 feet to lose, so looking good now on the distance, and the speed should be back at 220 just as we come over the waypoint itself. So as I said, we'll maintain 6,000 feet till we're over Lutiv. So as soon as we come through our 8,000 feet restriction, we can come back on that vertical speed again. There's our 220 knots. And we'll get rid of the speed brake once again.
EKCH 7000 and no reported traffic.
Slowly start coming up on the thrust, and just coming up on 8,000 feet so we can reduce our vertical speed. We'll come back to 500 feet per minute again now. That should put us nicely back on profile ultimately. 8,000 feet, that means we need 24 miles to run. We've currently got 42. So in the sense of our overall profile, we're actually still quite low here at the moment.
725, can I have 449? Hello.
And as I said, once we pass over waypoint Lutiv, we can turn down to 4,000.
Scandinavia 3, line up runway 17.
Looks like the ILS is now auto-tuning, so we'll just check that briefly. We've got 109.9, which we're expecting to see. And it looks like it has tuned up the correct course there as well. We'll take another look at that as we come onto the ILS.
Northman 3 Victor Papa, taxi to runway point runway 17.
Just coming below the base of the cloud at the moment, you can just make out the ground below us.
Scandinavia 3, wind 110 degrees, 2 knots, runway 17, clear for takeoff.
And just coming up through transitions, we'll set the altimeters. And we have QNH 1028 set and cross-checked.
Scandinavia 3, clear for takeoff.
So that was 8,000 feet. Again, we need 24 miles to run based off that. Showing 36.
Northman 3 Victor Papa, line up and wait till runway 17.
We'll start running through some of our landing items before we get busy. So the flight attendants have been advised, passenger signs are on. Thrust reversers are armed. And just the landing gear and the flaps to come. And as you can see now that we're out of the cloud layer, the weather clearing up quite nicely. Outside air temperature is 0 degrees, but we're clear of any moisture now, so we should be able to get the cowl anti-ice off. We won't centre up the heading bug, we'll just set runway heading now, otherwise we're going to be centering up quite a lot as we come around the corner. So there's 170 set on the heading.
Northman 3 Victor Papa, wind 130 degrees, 4 knots, runway 17, clear for takeoff.
And again, you can see from our magenta arc, we're going to be level 4,000 before Gilver, so we can reduce our vertical speed. We'll avoid levelling off if we can.
Scandinavia 3, identify 3,700, climb to flight level 200, after passing 5,000, direct Strömmen.
Thank you. Climb level 200, 5,000, direct Strömmen.
And just coming up on 20 miles to run, we'll start reducing that speed now. We'll come straight back to 180. As I said, that should help us with the incept onto the RLS. And we're below 220 knots, so we can start configuring. We'll take flaps 1. It's 1 to go.
Polaris, Norseman 396, standing by 40 center.
And now that we're down below the weather, again, a really stunning area of the world. Particularly beautiful with the sunrise.
Flight level 230, Norseman 396.
Not entirely sure how much I trust that localizer at the moment, showing that we're more or less on the loc, but as you can see we're quite offset from it, so I think what we'll do, just to avoid having any upsets from the aircraft, we'll come into heading. So just centering up the heading bug. And we'll just manoeuvre ourselves into position for the RLS. We'll go flaps 8. And again, that should allow us to give the aircraft quite a shallow intercept, which should help in terms of tracking. That localizer looking a little bit more correct there now. I'm not sure whether the sim models false localizer and glide slopes. I would be surprised if it does. And we're nicely visual here now, so we'll descend down to 3000.
FSRealisitc, contact Polaris control 126, state 145.
Just coming up from 4,000 feet. And showing about 18 miles to run, so looking good on the profile.
16450, Scandinavia and
And speed's nicely back now, just coming up on 190 knots.
Polaris, go for middag, Scandinavia and 408395, climb level 200.
Not sure whether you can make out the field or not just yet. Doesn't look like it. Says 1 to go.
306.
Looks like the flight plan's continuing to sequence, which is rather helpful. So next waypoint's Bablu. We've got a 200 knot speed restriction there, already looking good on that.
Man 3 Victor Papa identified 3001, climb to flat over 200 level change, not passing 5000 feet, direct random.
And showing 13 miles to run, just coming up through 3,700 feet, so should be good in terms of the profile and indeed the RLS.
That's about over 300 level change after 5,000 feet, direct random for Norseman Victor Papa.
So we'll come on to our intercept heading. Go for about 185. Try arming up the approach, we should be good now for the capture. And we have Loc 1 already captured. Doesn't quite agree with what we're seeing there on the display. Okay, the Loc just coming in now. You can see the runway off in the distance. And we have glide slope armed, so we should capture that momentarily. Go flaps 20.
Norseman 3 Victor Papa, contact Polaris control 126, decimal 45 long.
Polaris 12645, Norseman 3 Victor Papa.
Now we'll just keep an eye on things. The aircraft should capture the glide slope momentarily. We'll take the gear down around 8 miles. We'll maintain 180 for now. It says out capture.
Right by 10 degrees, speed report.
Very tricky to make out the glide slope there on the PFD, but I think we're just coming onto it now. Which would make sense, we're at 9 miles.
Copy, Norseman 396.
And there's glide slope. We'll take the gear down. And the speed can come back to 160 knots. We'll wait until we're back below 170 knots before we take any further flap. So gear down, 3 greens. Speed's looking good, we'll go flaps 30. And we'll go flaps 45. Maintain 160 till around 5 miles, and then we'll come back to our VREF, which we said was 137. So VREF is set, coming back off the thrust, we'll let the speed slowly come back. And the last of the landing items, the landing gear, is down 3 greens, flaps are set, so landing check is complete. So far it looks like the aircraft's doing a nice job here of tracking the ILS. Missed approach altitude, we're ultimately climbing up to 3,000 feet, we've got that set already.
Climb fell 360, Katrina 4.
And just coming up on the thrust here to maintain VREF. Just coming overhead the outer marker.
Direkt nästa gå vidare på
Flight level 190, north and 396.
And just coming through with 1,000 feet. We are stable. Not sure why we didn't get an auto call out for 1,000 feet. Anyway, we'll disconnect the autopilot, do some manual flying.
Teledoc 767, Greenwich 994. Teledoc 76, no reported traffic, northbound.
500.
That's checked, 500. With 3 minimums, we'll continue.
Teledoc 76, if you're going on western side of 7, you can contact on some right there for 118 shortly.
Just coming back on the thrust levers.
40. 30. 20. 10.
There's touchdown. Just coming to idle reverse. And gently coming onto the brakes. We'll take the second left exit.
That's 33, are you still airborne?
And vacating off to the left, we'll get the aircraft nice and slow. It's a 90-degree turn. Not quite sure what's going on with the taxi lights today, but we'll make do for now. So just vacating the runway, the after landing checks, the landing lights can come off, as can the strobe. Get the flaps up. And the weather radar can come off. We'll run through the after landing checks. So APU we can start up, it's going to be a very short taxi. Just find ourselves a vacant bay, looks like there's one off here at our 1 o'clock.
Flight contact Airbus 120.1.
So APU is starting, radar is off, transponder will leave on for the moment. Slats and flaps are retracted. Lights are set. And the probes will get off just once we straighten the aircraft up.
Echo Golf 01 QNH 994.
Doesn't look as though the lead-in light really leads into the gate itself, so we'll just position ourselves for the parking.
Echo Golf 01, clear to enter from the southwest, and expect low approach 35. Wind at the field from the east, 3 knots.
Onto the brakes, park brake can go on. Probes can come off, as can the window heats. APU is running, so we'll shut down the engines.
Echo Golf 01, go ahead.
And the transponder can go off. We'll get the seatbelt signs off as well. And lastly, the beacon. Fuel pumps can come off. And we'll run through our shutdown checks. So parking brake is on. Seatbelts are off. Thrust levers are in the shut-off position. Anti-ice is off. Fuel pumps are off. Beacon is off. And the nose wheel steering is off. So that's the shutdown checklist complete, and welcome to Bergen. So there you go guys, I hope you enjoyed another outing in the Aerosoft CRJ. As I said, the 900 and 1000 edition doesn't do a whole lot to enhance the previous iteration of the product, but it is a nice little addition to the sim nonetheless. Whilst Microsoft Flight Simulator may not be the perfect simulator as yet, it's really nice to see that the sim is slowly coming together piece by piece. For example, having the real-world AI traffic now, certainly just helping to enhance the realism a little bit further. As always, I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider giving it a like. If you want to see more content from the channel, then please consider subscribing as well. If you have any comments or questions for me, you can leave those down in the comments section below. I'll always do my best to try and answer them. And as ever, a huge thank you to my channel members and patrons for all of your support. It is hugely appreciated. Thank you very much to all of you for watching. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. Take really good care, and I will see you all again soon.